discuss an important issue. Today, I would like to discuss the advantages of providing the funding for all public middle and high schools in California to utilize virtual classrooms for some subjects. Sabrine Assim points out that when one teaches middle school students, the pedagogy must be age appropriate, with the students actively involved in the learning process, particularly in a technologically advanced world that is continuously changing and improving. Pedagogy is the method of teaching. COVID-19 gave us a crash course on how to provide classes in a virtual platform. This platform has been more successful in some subjects than in others, but this is a tool that can allow us to provide better and more equitable education. Today, we will look at the situation our educators face and the consequences of some of the issues. We will also look towards the future and identify some opportunities we would sacrifice without making these changes. We will look at what is inherently wrong with how the education system is functioning today and how it could be better. I want to look at how we fix these inherent problems by looking at some options for solving them. Finally, I will show you some of the advantages that await us. COVID shone a relatively bright spotlight on our education system and threw a great big wrench in its works. That was upsetting and frustrating, not to mention costly. It made us look at how to connect students with teachers so they could educate them. While this is true of all education levels, I want to focus on middle and high school levels today. In his article in the Los Angeles Times, Feldman wrote, "We identified all these needs before COVID," said State Senator Richard Pan, Democrat of Sacramento, a pediatrician who is chair of the Senate Health Committee, "and we did not step up. So now is the time to step up." Right now, schools are reopening, and it is time to address some of these issues. We can start to bridge the divide that has been so prevalent in our schools. One of these issues is the overcrowding in our schools. This has been an ongoing problem for decades. According to the California Department of Education, students who are in overcrowded classrooms with high ratios of students to teachers are more likely to have poor test results. Rabinowitz said, "Now is a moment in history where we can work together collectively to try to break those barriers, to make this time of digital exploration one where we can try to service all of our students better." The planned steps that have been taken to try to provide appropriate space between students can help with this. However, if the classrooms were already overcrowded, how will these schools accommodate the instructions given to them in the COVID-19 reopening in-person instructor framework and public health guidance for K-12 schools in California 2020-2021 school year, which states, to maximize space between seating and desks, distance teachers and other staff desks at least 6 feet away from students and other staff desks. Maintain a minimum of 3 feet between student chairs is strongly recommended. Another issue that has plagued our schools for decades is that they tend to have high rates of transmissions from many diseases, not just COVID-19. I have heard it said that if you want to get sick, go to school. This is also exacerbated in situations of overcrowding and older buildings with poor ventilation. Furthermore, as noted by Alberter in her dissertation regarding structural engineering of schools, we have seen over the last 3 decades a huge body of research that has determined that the condition of school facilities do affect students' health and performance, and some have further demonstrated that schools are overwhelmed by deteriorating facilities that threaten the health, safety, and learning opportunities of students. This deterioration will continue, and if there are fewer students in the classrooms, that can help mitigate this deterioration. Low-income and rural students do not have equal access to supplies and personnel. The income differential impacts how students can learn. Rabinowitz suggests that we hire tech-savvy teachers who already work with the current populations to train their fellow teachers on the techniques that work for them and can be adapted for other educators. In case it needs to be said, pay these tech-savvy teachers for their extra labor. While not ideal, this would create some equity in education across neighborhoods and districts by providing all schools access to the same training, resources, and professional development that is already made available to better funded schools. According to Susan Bush Mesendez and Julie A. Marsh, the next decade of education reform may rely upon efforts to shore up the stability of the district's leadership and fiscal conditions. The district will certainly need such resources if its leadership and educators hope to effect change that will transform the schools and ultimately benefit the city's children. There are not just ways the students are being harmed that is of concern here. There is also missed opportunities for gaining valuable skills that would help them in any future education plans they may have, and having skills that are very desirable for employers. According to Indeed's Hiring Lab reports, many job seekers are looking for work that is not tied to an office or a fixed schedule. Jobs which enable people to work from home, such as remote customer service, are also increasingly popular. An HR professional expressed the importance of having good professional skills with computers and technology in an interview. Those who have more experience use professional software and hardware are more likely to get an interview, especially if that experience is sector specific. These applicants are more desirable than those without the skills to understand the difference between social and professional computer skills. A college requires the ability for choosing classes and class formats that best match a student's learning style. Some colleges have huge lecture halls that may have nearly 100 students in them. The ability to manage your class requirements, this is also known as project management in work sectors, manage their own time, be a self-starter, and interact with peers professionally as opposed to in a social manner. These issues are inherent to the public school environment in too many schools. Massive reductions in funding are forcing school districts to make tough decisions to optimize maintenance expenditures, and over the last 3 decades, a huge body of research has determined that the condition of school facilities do affect the students' health and performance, and some have further demonstrated that schools are overwhelmed by deteriorating facilities that threaten the health, safety, and learning opportunities of students. The majority of transition costs have already been appropriated to the aforementioned virtual transition. Maintaining these costs going forward is considerably less than the cost of maintenance of the physical buildings. If the students are not in the petri dish that is a school classroom, they are much less likely to get sick from any of the myriad of diseases, not just COVID-19. These steps are not catch-alls, of course, but they definitely can help decrease student illness and missed school days due to illness. Also, if the student can access the class recording later, this is another way to reduce student absences. As addressed earlier, this is an opportunity for students to gain valuable skills that will help them in the future in their schooling and employment. We can accomplish this by having the state of California immediately pass legislation to allow for all public school districts to have the option of using a hybrid model that incorporates both in-person and virtual classes. This legislation should provide funding for this by supporting the development of virtual learning tools and programs and provide educators and administrators ongoing education to maintain the most current advancements in this area. It will mandate that virtual instruction be a part of union negotiations with educators. Funding will also hire additional teachers, as well as providing all the teachers a safe and quiet teaching environment while on campus. Some teachers may be able to teach both, having in-class students in attendance as well as virtual students at the same time. These funds will be managed by the School Oversight Board and will come from normal state budgets or special bond measures. What I am proposing is already being done at the undergraduate level. Many of the logistics needed for this to be successful have already been addressed, since all the schools in California were, or still are, providing virtual classes. Providing some of these different subjects as virtual classes can provide many popular benefits to students. After COVID-19 forced all schools to go virtual, we learned how to do virtual classes. Just over a year later, we have found that students do not mind and possibly prefer online learning. According to NBC, although all schools within Los Angeles Unified have reopened, the vast majority of students are opting to continue remote learning, with the district reporting Monday that just 7% of high schoolers, 12% of middle schoolers, and 30% of elementary children are back in the classroom. As addressed earlier, the students would have the option of virtual classes for some of their subjects. Taking these steps will also give them a sense of self-efficacy, in that they are given more control over their lives. Students will be able to identify those subjects that would be better suited for them as virtual. They'd also gain more skills that are needed in many work environments as well as the collegiate levels. Also, by removing students from classroom facilities, this will allow for smaller classes as well as reducing wear and tear on the buildings. Another social benefit would be that fewer students on campus would lead to a more ability for students to have better social experiences with their peers. In conclusion, now is the time to incorporate all the knowledge we have gained about virtual learning. Sometimes when we face challenging times, it's hard to see the positives that can come from it. This proposal is one way that we can start to heal from the trauma of the COVID-19 and a way to model for our children a way to come through difficult times and make the world a better place. Thank you. So, questions? You don't have to.